Embracing what I know and constantly pushing to learn at the frontier has been a big part of my journey. At first, I struggled with imposter syndrome, feeling unqualified to speak on many topics. I now realize that by sharing my journey as a genuine learner, I invite my audience to learn alongside me. Nobody wants to listen to an arrogant, know-it-all expert. Over time, I've grown from a newbie to an intermediate and eventually an expert in some areas. It's so important to keep that beginner's mindset. Admit when you don't know something and stay humble in your learning process.
Welcome to Brave. Learn from Southeast Asia's best tech leaders. Build the future, learn from our past, and stay human in between. No BS on success. I'm Jeremy Au, venture capitalist, serial founder, Harvard MBA, science fiction nerd, and dad of 2 daughters. Every week, we debate startup news, interview changemakers, answer listener questions, and share personal insights. Join our movement of over 40,000 members and get transcripts, resources, and community at www.bravesea.com. Stay well and stay brave. Join us at the Startup Conference Echelon X. Engage with over 10,000 of Asia's innovators and decision makers on May 15 and 16 at the Singapore Expo. We have 30 exclusive complimentary tickets for our podcast listeners. Sign up and use the promo codes BRAVEPOD or ECXJeremy to claim your free tickets now.
I published my first ever podcast on 12 April 2020. You could hear my nervousness, even though the interview guest was my best friend and former co-founder. After a week, the analytics showed that only 2 people had listened to the episode, myself and my mom. I took a deep breath, laughed, and wondered if I should even bother to continue. Years later, Brave has become Southeast Asia's #1 tech podcast, with millions of downloads, thousands of regular listeners, and a source of deep personal satisfaction. Let me share with you why you should consider becoming a creator as well. I've always enjoyed consuming thought leadership. The world is filled with passionate experts of their own specific niches: coaching, mental resilience, cooking, travel, and more. Reading, listening, and watching their perspectives has always been a fantastic way for me to learn and empathize at the same time. Their knowledge has gifted me the head start I needed to build successful startups, emotional support during bad days, and inspiration to explore new paths. When I returned to Southeast Asia after a long USA career, I realized that my tech media diet didn't work anymore. My favorites had turned out to be tailored to another region's startup ecosystem. Back then, local alternatives were not much better. A mix of state media, press release mills, and history-oriented podcasts. The pandemic had forced social isolation upon us all, preventing me from finding out what I wanted to learn over dinners or coffee chats. I then chose to start the podcast I wish I could listen to. Deep, human-centric stories about the region's tech leaders and their journeys. Navigating the complexities, opacity, and nuances of our markets like Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand was tough, even for someone like me who grew up in Singapore. With geopolitical tensions, rapidly evolving technology waves, and fierce competition, there was a clear need for industry expertise that addressed the current landscape. Deep in my heart, I knew that I wasn't alone in feeling this way, so I set out to create something that will fill that void and bring us all a little closer together. Creating the podcast has had many benefits for me. It has been a great way to deeply engage with senior leaders, share insights broadly, enhance my credibility in the industry, and improve my speaking skills. In the course of business, I now often meet strangers who listen to the podcast and are already familiar with my communication style, thus accelerating rapport and ability to strike a deal. For me, writer's block has always been a challenge. I know many others who feel the same. Podcasting has been my way to overcome this hurdle by allowing ideas to flow naturally through conversation. As creator Seth Godin says, no one ever gets talker's block, because talking is something we naturally do without overthinking. Every interview turns out spontaneous, where we express ourselves freely without the paralyzing fear of perfection that often comes with writing. Our conversations often take unexpected turns into personal stories, far richer than any script I could write. This organic flow translates beautifully into recorded audio. Listeners enjoy being at a simulated dinner table, listening to the engaging dialogue between 2 experts who are friends with each other. This format also plays to my strengths as an extrovert. I also get to intentionally improve my listening, facilitation, and body language skills with each discussion. My advice is to start with your passion. Choose a topic that you are genuinely interested in and passionate about. It's okay if it's something unconventional or not work-related. The key is to talk about something you can speak about even if no one is listening. Trust me, for a long time, it will feel like speaking to an empty room. As my mentor said, talk about a topic that sets your soul on fire. As you record your first few episodes, you'll start to notice if the topic isn't quite clicking, much like the moment you realize an outfit isn't a good fit for your body. If that realization comes, trust your instincts. It's a sign that it's time to pivot and find a topic that feels more true to who you are. The process is straightforward. Make a commitment to record once a week. Same time, same place. For myself, I schedule regular hours of recordings, often during weekends or evenings. Make sure to invite guests who are good conversationalists by nature. This allows me to keep my research work light and the conversation unscripted. Start the recording, smile, and have fun. Relax into a natural flow and cadence. Don't worry about getting everything perfect on the first try. After the recording, you can always edit out the mistakes, boring parts, or anything you're not thrilled with. Delegate tasks that are not your strengths. Initially, I did all the editing myself, which was time consuming and led to burnout. Over time, I learned to delegate this task to professional editors. There are increasingly powerful editing tools that streamline the production process as well. This has freed me up to focus on my core strength of interviewing. Now, I have the bandwidth to record 3 times a week. I actively seek feedback from listeners to understand what they enjoy and how the podcast can be. Engaging with my audience has been crucial. I actively seek feedback from my listeners whenever I meet them. Who are you? What do you enjoy? How can we improve? What do you want to stay the same? What are some notable moments you remember? What are the podcasts you listen to? What streaming platform do you listen or watch on? What is your dream? What are your fears? Can I have a look at your podcast library to see all the shows you follow? Thanks to these questions and answers, I now record podcasts with a much better sense of who out there will be later listening to the episode. With this feedback, I've adopted a mindset of continuous improvement, inspired by the Japanese concept of Kaizen. Each month, I strive to make one improvement to the podcast. For example, people didn't like my initial sound quality, so I got a better mic. Then I heard they watch video podcasts, so I started recording video alongside the audio. Someone said she didn't have time to watch the whole video, so I started releasing text transcripts alongside the videos. The biggest challenge I faced was keeping my energy for the podcast high over the years. In the beginning, I mostly interviewed friends and close contacts, which made the process enjoyable and less stressful. The stakes were low, the shared context was high, so the conversations were naturally fun, casual, and in-depth. The first ever interview with my best friend was a natural exploration about our old army days, the early struggles of building our social enterprise, and our plans for the future. It was a fantastic start, which reinforced my decision to keep podcasting. However, the podcast almost became a victim of its own success. With more popularity came more requests from big names who didn't really align with my interests. I remember an interview with a high-profile executive with an impressive background, but I just couldn't get into the conversation. The guests didn't know me, and they were trying to impress some invisible audience. I didn't know them either, so things felt awkward and forced, and I wasn't having fun. After 6 months of repeated, stilted interviews, I was close to burning out. That's when I realized I had to make a change. I decided to invite guests I was genuinely interested in. This experience taught me to stay true to what I'm passionate about. I'm a podcaster, not an actor. If I'm not interested in a guest, it shows up in my body language and tone. Listeners are smart, and they can tell when it's happening. How can I expect them to enjoy the interview if I'm not enjoying the interview? By choosing guests who genuinely spark my curiosity, I keep the podcast authentic for myself and every listener out there. As a result, an unexpected joy has been rediscovering the art of craftsmanship. I have realized that podcasting needs a different approach. It isn't about getting more listeners, but being focused on depth, presence, and flow. I saw this inspiring documentary about chef Yamada Kosuke, the 8th generation owner who runs Tamahide restaurant in Tokyo. Customers line up for hours to try his oyakodon dish. The episode showed how every tiny step mattered to him in creating the perfect texture of the chicken, consistency of the egg, and the balance of flavors with rice. Imagine 250 years perfecting one dish. Most people would have moved on to something new or different, but these chefs stuck with it and mastered their craft. Just like these chefs, I now see my podcast as a craft that requires similar dedication and attention to detail. It isn't just about producing episodes. It's about being present in every conversation, listening actively, and continuously improving the quality of my content. This shift in mindset allows me to appreciate the process and find fulfillment in the daily journey. Connecting with the podcast community gives me the boost I need to keep perfecting my craft. One time, a listener reached out to say that she had laughed while listening to our honest review on the ecosystem's hurdles. Super gratifying, and it pushes me to keep getting better at offering more valuable content. We have a testimonial page on the www.bravesea.com website, where I list all the nice things people have said. It's not just for new listeners. It's a pick-me-up for myself that keeps me motivated. Embracing what I know and constantly pushing to learn at the frontier has been a big part of my journey. At first, I struggled with imposter syndrome, feeling unqualified to speak on many topics. I now realize that by sharing my journey as a genuine learner, I invite my audience to learn alongside me. Nobody wants to listen to an arrogant, know-it-all expert. Over time, I've grown from a newbie to an intermediate and eventually an expert in some areas. It's so important to keep that beginner's mindset. Admit when you don't know something and stay humble in your learning process. Here's a friendly heads up. Don't expect to hit it big with podcasting overnight. It's more of a marathon than a sprint, needing constant effort, commitment, and time to get better. Unlike a quick race to the finish, podcasting is about patience and sticking with it. Growing your audience, perfecting your content, and getting the hang of a great conversation doesn't happen right away. Enjoy the ride, celebrate the small wins, and keep in mind that real success comes from sticking with it and thinking long term. Looking ahead, I'm excited to keep improving the podcast and finding new ways to engage with my listeners. I want to host more community events, write deeper content, and be even more open in my discussions. The creative journey is ongoing, and I can't wait to see where it goes next. Podcasting has been crucial in building my personal brand, sharpening my skills, and reaching a wider audience. I urge you to create content that you're passionate about, regardless of whether it's podcasting, writing, short form video, or whatever comes next. Feel free to message me when you decide to share your unique voice with all of us, because I would be happy to be a second listener in the world.
Thank you for listening to Brave. If you enjoyed this episode, please share the podcast with your friends and colleagues. We would also appreciate you leaving a rating or review. Head over to www.bravesea.com for member content, resources, and community. Stay well and stay brave.